Hey guys, welcome to my little introduction for my free pixel art template. So in the next 5 or 10 minutes or so, it will be a lot shorter than my normal tutorials. I'll tell you guys a bit about how the template works, what you can change or want to change or should change and all that type of stuff. And basically that's pretty much it. So if you haven't done so already, head over to my new website, very nice and orange. You can go to the free pixel art template. Again, I'll provide the direct link underneath my video, and then you just scroll down below. You may want to read it or whatever, and then just hit download, and there you go. You will be presented with a zip file. I've been told that a zip file works on Macs as well. If it doesn't, please let me know, and I can make these files available separately. They're very small, so it doesn't really matter. So there are 3 files in there. 2 files are basically the same base template, and the 3rd file is a bit different. That's where I changed the shape 3D node to give a bit of a different overall look, but I'll go into that in a moment. So yeah, let's head back to the composition. So in the first example, as you've seen at the start, right, you see this text coming up and these the background moving up and down. You've got these little towers going up and down and the text emerging from it, and then then going back again. This sort of illustrates what this template is capable of and what it can be used for. So in essence, you always have a background, right? And you always have a foreground. So the background is basically what's being displaced by an item in here. So it feeds into the P custom tool, the pink input. And the foreground is basically the text, and it's going into the green input, the image 1 input. Right, so out of the box you can change an awful lot of stuff. So first of all, the input text itself. If you want to change the text, and you will want to change the text because what's in here is a bit rubbish really, but you need to take note of how you need to do that. So let me just head over to Notepad. So here you can see how it should be constructed. So it always is preceded by a number and closed by square brackets. And then it's closed off again by a number, the following number, closed off by squared brackets, and then etc. And again, ultimately, it should be closed off by a number. The rationale here is really that the expressions that the template is using is looking for these numbers in these brackets. So this basically means 1, okay, this is the first word that will come up. At 2, it will cut it off. So this is the first word, this is the second word, this is the 3rd word, etc. The way it works then is essentially that depending on the cycle time, so there's a very important parameter, the cycle time governs as to how long it will take for the text to come up and disappear again. So in this particular case, it's set to 96, so it will take 96 frames to go from nothing to there and back to nothing, right? So the lower this is, the faster the text will come up and disappear again. So if you want to have something really fast, obviously you will have a very low cycle time, and vice versa, right? But you have to be a bit mindful. So if your composition is of a certain length, you need to ensure that there is sufficient text, right, to drive that. So if you only have to say 2 words and the cycle time is, say, 50, then that will be done in 100 frames. And if the composition is, say, 200 frames, then it will run out of a feed, and then you get an error. So just be a bit mindful of that. Of course, you can always decide to have empty text. So just have a bunch of numbers. So in which case, so say 7 here, I add a 7, and it should be fine as well. Right? Actually, I haven't tested that. So maybe a good test. In any case, right? Next thing you want to do is essentially head over to the font and change the font to your liking. What typically works best is a bit of a heavy font, right? If it is too light, the font, or too thin, it may not come through very well. So let me give you a quick example of a thin font. This may be one. Not entirely certain actually. Yeah, so this is a very thin font. So if you look at this, if I display this here, and that if you all pixelate that, there's not an awful lot left. All right, so let's undo that. Right here, you see this is the original font Bauhaus. By the way, if you haven't got it installed on your system, of course, then you can't use this one, or you need to install it first. So I would advise you to, well, whatever, come up with a nice font and use that. Right, so next one up, of course, you can change the font size and such, and very importantly, of course, the shading. Right, so in this particular case, I make use of 2 layers: the inside, the fill, and the outline as such. But you can change everything. You can use gradients if you like, or whatever. Even an image doesn't really matter. In fact, the whole thing could be replaced by a sequence of images as well. The one thing you have to bear in mind, though, is that the image size, right? So if you go here, that's set to 1920 or 1080p essentially. It's best to keep at least that either the same size as the input for the background displacement, or at least have the same ratio. Otherwise, you'll see some weird effects. Right? But back to the text, right? So let's make a few changes on the fly. So let's go to the fill and make that white. Right, and as you can see, it will take a bit for that to come through. Right, that looks okay, I guess. And for the outline is currently set to a gradient, make that a solid black. Oh, actually, let's make it red. Right. So there you go. And you can change all other types of stuff, but essentially, yeah, that's what you do in a text. So again, all the text parameters, but on the text tab, the cycle time is very important. Right. Next one up. Let's go to the P Custom tool. There in the numbers tab, I made available a number of parameters, right, that are important. You can skip the number 8 parameter. N1, surface display strength. So the higher this is, the more displacement you see of the background. Again, that's governed by one of these inputs, or you can create your own inputs, but we'll go through that in a moment. Then you've got the text height. So if you want to lower that a bit, I think you can guess where that will go. This will be a bit lower. Or you can go extremely high, like so. Right. Then you've got this tick box, displacement affects text. Text height, right, as I said, we can change that. Here you ensure that the background type movement will be translated in the text as well, right? But if you want that to be translated when it goes up and down, it's great. But if you want it to reach an even level, you need to set the plateau, right, and tick that. And then it will hit a plateau when it reaches the highest point. In this particular composition, of course, when you look at the P Custom, there's displacement that affects the text, i.e. the waves, but I don't want to reach that plateau. I want this to keep waving, so the top keeps waving following the wave of the displacement of the background. Right, so then you can create these typical effects. But really, what I would advise you to do is just play around with it. Right. Next one up is the background color. Pretty straightforward, right? You set the background color, and boom, there you are. I am aware that this is not a particularly great color combination, but it's just to give an example. I think that is most of it of the P Custom. Again, all the smart stuff happens in here. Right, this is the expression that governs all the displacement and such, and there's some stuff around the color and all that type of stuff. So if you want to dive into that, be my guest and change it to your liking, but it's not needed if you want to just use this template. Now, next one up is the displacement input. I've provided a few examples here, but in essence, it could be anything. So I'm just showing that on the second viewer. So this is just a fast noise tool set to sort of a wave type pattern, right? And this is the center is being animated so that over time you have this movement. So if instead of this node, we feed in the wave node, so unhook this and hook this in, then all of a sudden you see this wave type effect. All right. There are a few other examples provided. Let me give one other one. Again, you can, you know, just play around with it and use your own examples and such, but just ensure it is sort of animated, otherwise it is a bit boring. But you can do some really clever stuff as well. So in this particular example, I won't go into the detail here, but I use the cycle time parameter of the text, right? It governs how fast the text comes up and disappears again. I use that as a parameter in terms of animating the center of this particular element, right? And then you can get these sort of timed animations. I think, yeah, one more thing, the image emitter, in the density, the lower the density is, the bigger your pixels will be, in essence, and the kinder it will be on your CPU and GPU. So if you do have particular issues with running this, or when you put this together, it may all be a bit heavy, so you can temporarily lower this. Your preview won't be great, but it will be a lot faster, and then when you're done, you can increase it a bit again. And now just be a bit mindful, if you go overboard here, it will become very slow, and in some extreme cases it may freeze Fusion. I've had it on a couple of occasions. It may be a local issue with my computer, I don't know, but it can be quite heavy. Just yeah, one last thought here, save the composition often, right? There are a lot of expressions, there are a lot of particles, a lot of 3D stuff going on, so it may take its toll, so do save it very often. Yeah, then all you need to do is basically add a saver here, and then you can save out your work. And I think that's pretty much it for the basic stuff. Now I've provided one other example in the download, and that's the spike example, as you can see here. Yeah, in this particular case, I replaced the shape 3D I had, and that was more or less like a cube and then elongated, and replaced that with a sphere. Very, very simple, and that elongated that, and that's by essentially, let me just quickly show that, the Z scale or Z scale. That was actually already set to 30 for the cube as well, but that basically allows you to have a much longer shape, and that's of course for these examples where you've got very high text, that's very important. Yeah, so I changed it here. I changed the shading of that a bit, or you know, the texture, and that was basically it. Right, so you can play around with it, and of course you can animate the camera as you please. You can do all other kinds of stuff, add more lights, all that type of stuff. In my case, I've got some ambient occlusion as well. And yeah, that's basically it. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you've got any questions about the template, any issues with downloading it or understanding it, or if you see issues with it, or if you've got some hints and tips to make it better, absolutely, I would love to know it. Also, if you make anything with this, and if you've got anything on YouTube, Vimeo, wherever, if you can provide a link, I would love to see it. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I certainly had a lot of fun putting this together. I know my examples may not blow you away, but hopefully it will illustrate what is possible. And I'm sure you guys can come up with some fantastic stuff. And yeah, if you like this video, please like it. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do subscribe and share it if you want. And yeah, I hope you guys are having a great day, and we'll have a great remainder of the day. And yeah, see you guys next time. Thanks very much. Take care.